Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is once again that time of the week where we drop some saturation truth bombs, dig underneath all of the establishment propaganda, and give you that real, uncut, raw, N to the E to the W to the S. It is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. And as always, the following thoughts, views, and opinions are not necessarily those of 89.1 FM, WIDR Kalamazoo, or Western Michigan University, no matter how dope or insightful they may be.
Pretty sure we're just speaking for ourselves here.
Oh yeah, not to sound too humble or the opposite thereof, but oh man, we've got a few disparate topics to talk about.
Oh, there's so much
today.
Just like every week, there's always so much.
There always is. Oh man. I would say we can break it down into a couple of different specific topics. We've got a couple of different recent news stories that deal with climate change, both locally in the state of Michigan and abroad. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about political strategy, what's going on with the Democrats.
Dear Joe Biden, your memes were great, but meme magic is not going to strike twice, man.
No, bad. Oof. Some interesting news, kind of following up some statewide news about the Democrats, about Bill Schuette saying some really horrible stuff, about we've got a local story that we're going to talk about in a little bit that ties into the thing we were yelling about last week with the state gun bill that just went through. So, yeah. So, why don't we go ahead and kind of jump off talking about some of this climate stuff. And I wanted to open it with, this is something I saw on CBC News. It's specifically their technology and science wing. And back in, it was the, about 25 years ago, early 90s. There's 1,500 scientists who issued a warning about global warming. Said this is going to lead to some really bad outcomes. Predicted a lot, pretty much exactly what we're seeing today. And very recently, it was basically like a sequel or a gritty reboot of that letter.
It's not the gritty reboot. It's the gritty follow-up.
Yeah. Or actually, no, probably a better metaphor would be like it's a second notice, and God, I hope we don't get to the final notice.
The final notice is we all die.
Yeah, final notice is
and then we get to see if God's real or not.
Yeah. All of your emissions targets are past due. So. And this also during the this week over in Bonn, Germany, they're doing the week long. They do like the yearly climate conference, actually hosted by Fiji this year, particularly because they're one of those island nations that might sink into the ocean if we don't do anything about it.
What is it now? The G4?
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. And there's been a lot of interesting news coming out of that. I'll describe that fairly briefly, but good news, bad news. Good news, there's a delegation from America there of various governors, mayors, particularly like Washington, Oregon, and California, who are saying like they're basically part of this We're Still In coalition. And we talked about this a few weeks ago on the show when the orange one, the American Cheeto-in-Chief, originally pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement, that there was a lot of local.
It's one of the only things he pulls. It's one of the only things he pulled out of.
Let's be honest. We'll talk about that a little later too. God. Where was I? Oh yeah. So we've got these mayors and governors over there talking about how they're still going to hit the targets. And both locally, or not locally, but both in America and internationally, you've seen an effect very similar to the effect that Trump has had on the general American public, which is, you are so gross and disgusting that we are going to do the opposite of the thing that you just said.
It's how one of my dad's ex-girlfriends got relationship advice from TV.
Yep.
She would watch soap operas and then do the opposite of what they did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
But anyway, I really appreciate the fact that there are some institutional bodies within the American government, at least state by state, that really does enumerate the fact that states' rights are good because states can just do what they want, essentially, when it comes to opting into non-binding agreements about meeting certain emission standards by X amount of time. I think it's also good to, it's good that California's in it, especially since they account for how much? A lot.
Well, it's actually, here's what's interesting about California is I'm glad you brought that up. California, and I'll give them credit where credit is due. They are one of the leaders in the country for pushing clean energy. At least that's what they say a lot in their language. But Jerry Brown is one of those establishment. We need a steady fossil fuel transition. Democrats, actually, there was an incident where I think it was mostly indigenous it was all indigenous folks, and there's been keeping in the ground activists there all week doing civil disobedience and demonstrations and stuff, but they interrupted Jerry Brown while I was talking with keep it in the ground. And this is specifically related to the fact that while California is pumping a lot of resources into clean energy, they will not commit to ban fracking.
Yeah.
And Jerry Brown's response, well, one, he said something extremely inappropriate to the native protesters, like, oh, maybe we should keep you in the ground. Oh, haha. Because it's always funny when a white American politician jokes about
putting people in the ground.
Natives.
Yes. I mean, there's definitely a degree of bad that exceeds the normal level of bad for that. But at the same time, I think the argument is your politician, your elected representative is saying, well, maybe I think we should keep you in the ground.
I was telling a joke.
It was a joke, guys. Yeah. I wasn't implying any kind of mafia or mob or hit tactics.
I hope in his mind he was just like the Ron Howard voiceover from Arrested Development. Just I've made a terrible mistake.
Oh man, I hope so, because that is pretty terrible.
And he was asked by Amy Goodman, the Democracy Now, about fracking after this little interchange, and his response was like this mushy-mouthed defense. Like, well, we need cars. If people don't have cars, then they'll be rioting in the streets. You can't just take away everyone's cars. And it's like, what does that have to do with fracking?
What does that have to do with? Dude, is gasoline produced out of fracking? I have no idea.
Well, no,
do we actually use the natural gas that is produced by fracking to power cars?
Well, here's the thing too, is it's part of this whole argument that you can't just change the whole infrastructure overnight, which is true, but at the same time, there are historical precedents for us pooling our resources and making drastic changes to our economy when it was necessary.
Nobody reasonable, and this is what gets me every single time when it comes down to fighting for progressive left ideas and policies. The big one's obviously universal health care. Other big ones are free higher education for people. And honestly, I suppose we should be calling it subsidized education, subsidized healthcare, because that's what it actually is. but it's 100% subsidized. That's the whole freaking idea.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, like fighting for these progressive left ideas and running into the people who have gotten power and money and prestige from the way the system is currently, telling maybe they made a few tweaks to the system. They worked the system so that it's in favor of more people, but not quite. But it's still, not inclusive enough, which is why more people are still saying, hey, we need to open this up more. You run into these establishment politicians who've been operating the system the way they want for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And they're all like, oh, well, we can't just change everything overnight. No one's asking you to change it overnight. No one's asking you to repeal decades of infrastructure and decades of investment in those systems, but to scale down the investment in that infrastructure down way hard, scale up investment in infrastructure, in green energy infrastructure and clean power infrastructure.
Yeah,
scale that up drastically over the period of, say, 5 years.
Yes,
no one's asking. No one reasonable is ever going to ask for something to change overnight, unless it is reasonable for that thing to change overnight.
Yeah, and like when we talk about like keep it in the ground, what we're saying is, like science says, we need to stop extracting fossil fuels, or we are, basically doomed. And so what that needs to incentivize
because of our usage of fossil fuels. It's contributed greatly to this. Tapping back on the 25-year anniversary of this global warming letter, that article, like I managed to read most of the articles before I came in today. Unlike me, the article mentions that, like, we are either at the cusp or at the beginning of the sixth great extinction event, and it is caused by human impact on the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Humans have caused an extinction event.
Oh yeah, they called it in scientific circle. It's the Anthropocene extinction event.
Neil deGrasse Tyson commented on it. What's his name? Seth MacFarlane. Yeah. Because Seth MacFarlane was responsible for the newest series of Cosmos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, they touched on this in that series. They even mentioned that, hey, the next great extinction event that the Earth might experience is probably going to be caused by us. Congratulations, people. We're there.
Mm-hmm.
We're there.
We are, and I would recommend...
The bees are dying.
Check out, if you don't... Well, you gotta get a little depressed when you read this stuff, but The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth Kolbert, I believe. That's a great book that really goes into the science of what is going on right now, and the fact that we are seeing a rapid extinction of species all over the world, and it is caused by human behavior. But kind of reeling back just a little bit, talking about this on a political scale. So
you want to talk about... I was actually going to go there.
Yeah, when governors like Jerry Brown, mushmouth about, like, how it's crazy or radical to demand change that's quick. Well, here's the thing. It's absolutely insane to not understand that we need as quick of change as possible. Now, are we going to literally grab every car out of California, throw it in the ocean, and replace it with an electric one tomorrow?
God,
no,
I wish.
We're not asking for, like, Disney magic here, but we are saying use the incentive of okay, so fossil fuels will get more expensive if we don't keep extracting them. good. That will incentivize both car manufacturers and people to switch to electric. And like, look, this is coming from, I've never owned an electric car. I've always had crappy beaters. I've never owned a car that has been from past the 90s. So
I mean, currently the car of my wet dreams is a Tesla. I'm never going to own one. I'm just not in the economic bracket where I'm ever going to own one, really.
Yeah, exactly. But we're at a point where there are alternatives. Build a broader statewide public transportation infrastructure. That's something they're talking about everywhere. Here in Michigan.
I mean, that's part of that's when people propose a New Deal, that's part of the New Deal.
Yeah.
Part of the New Deal is making sure that there are recharge stations that have highway access across the interstate infrastructure of America as we rebuild the interstate infrastructure of America because it desperately needs it. That's so it doesn't even make any sense to me when people offer the idea that we can't do this radical change over the course of a couple years, because that's like, we're talking, like, when we're talking national scales, we can't talk tomorrow, next week, next month, next year even. We got to talk about 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line. We have to have that future vision. And if we don't have that future vision, if we don't have that foresight and to see this, we're gonna continue to shoot ourselves in our own our foot.
And the main picadillo, especially that Democrats use to defend their perpetuation of fossil fuel expansion. And here's a local example. So the Michigan Democratic Party, or the State Central Committee, they just met last Saturday, and they voted to kill a resolution to oppose the Nexus gas pipeline. And that's a direct threat to our environment in the state. But what they said is like, well, ideally, we wouldn't be building pipelines, but we have to protect jobs. And there's a lot of labor unions out there, too, and keep in mind, like, I like unions. We need more of them. But there's a lot of them that are clinging to this old economy model that has been proven to have, like, tiny, like, short-term advantages with no sustainable long put out. Like, good example, the Dakota Access Pipeline created like about a couple hundred jobs. There's going to be 12 permanent jobs for the Dakota Access Pipeline. Everything else is like something that only lasts a few months.
Thanks, automation.
Yeah. And because of that, you are essentially risking the drinking water of millions of people so that a handful of individuals can get 6 months of work and then be in the exact situation they were before that. And something my friend Sam Pernick brought up, he's on that State Central Committee. He's very involved in the Dem-Enter movement, head of the Young Democrats in Michigan, is the lack of imagination in the Michigan Democratic Party, as well as people like Jerry Brown, as well as most of the establishment Democrats, in saying like, no, not only like you make these promises about creating a green infrastructure, but when push comes to shove, we need to have the imagination and the gall and the bravery to say we need to go in a different direction. So it may be a little bit more difficult, but we need to do something that will create long-term sustainable jobs.
I mean, retraining creates jobs. Like, retraining creates jobs for teachers. Because a shift in infrastructure is going to require a new set of skills for an established workforce. I kind of want to roll it back to, like, I also agree, unions are great, we need more of them, and they need to be strong. Labor needs to be strong in America, otherwise the middle class has no political voice. However, it just seems to me like, wait, you're telling me that unions are victim to the same tired, old, broken thinking and system operation that the rest of the system is?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, who knew? Like, of course, a pipeline workers union is going to be opposed to anything that does not create oil pipelines, because that's their job. which is why retraining is necessary, because that way those union workers who already have a requisite amount of skill in what they already know, all that has to be done is to train them. All that has to be done is training to apply that set of extant skills to a new framework. That's literally it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that costs a little more money. That's going to cost a little more money. But I've played too much Civilization. I've played too much StarCraft. I've played too much World. I've played too many RTSs to know that upgrades don't come cheap. Upgrades do not come without expense. We have to be able to put forward the gumption to say, no, we need to spend on this. And it's one of those things where we have to convince people that we need to spend money on this. And that's hard when the opposite side attack ad is, oh, you just want to tax and spend and tax and spend and tax and spend, without, really adding the nuance that, yes, we want to tax and spend, but that's because we're a government, not a business.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're not here to enrich ourselves. We're not here to create profit for anybody. We're here to take money from people and then allocate that money into things that are good for people.
Well, here's the thing, though, is like, you can catch, both Democrats and Republicans in a hypocritical stance here, because not only, even if you are looking at it from a purely capitalistic point of view, stopping innovation, stopping the development of green energy employment and jobs and industries is, for one thing, a big point of discussion was how China is far surpassing us right now.
They're kicking our butts. American solar producers complain about China outproducing us and making better, cheaper solar panels because America doesn't want to invest in green energy. America doesn't want to invest in
more specifically, the lobbyists the fossil fuel lobbyists who pay off our Congress people do not want us investing in solar.
Oh, but then then it's just an argument of, well, why don't rich people invest in these things because they're, investors and they create jobs and blah, blah, blah. Obviously, they're not. Obviously, they're sticking with what makes them money already. Why take risks? Like, when you go gambling, do you take the safe bet or the risky bet? Most of the time. Like, do you take a risky bet when you can lose everything? Or do you take a risky bet when you still have a nest egg that you can fall back on to make safe bets on until you have enough to make another risky move?
Yeah, and granted, there are American industries that think green. Like, let's go take an example, like Elon Musk. However, he is far more of like an internationalist. He kind of open sources a lot of his ideas.
Thanks for that, Elon.
Whereas, basically, here's the metaphor. Elon Musk and a lot of similar kind of green capitalists here in America are zipping around the world on these like supersonic clean energy jets, while here in America, the fossil fuel industries have this giant sprawling fortress that is connected directly
oil cannons. I'm using this in a game.
Which is connected directly to Congress, so like their power in this country is so concentrated that even as their industry naturally should be dying, like the actual resource that they have built themselves around is running out. And
it's running out. Demand is going down. Mm-hmm. As new technologies come in, like restricting investment into innovation and keeping innovation from happening stagnates the market. It 100% stagnates the market. If you care about free markets, then you care about stagnant markets. Mm-hmm. If you care about stagnant markets, you should realize that the American market is pretty freaking stagnant. It has been,
Mm-hmm.
and it has been for like the last 2 decades. And the only reason why we have this economic growth is because it is supported by it's supported by government incentives.
Yeah, that are, again, built to help out the richest of the rich, and that's where all those resources get funneled up to the top 1%.
The economy, this is like, I actually hate talking about the economy because, like, when it comes to socio-political outcomes and influences, because money's not real, the economy's not real, it's all numbers on a sheet.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Money is a thing that we created to help us exchange complicated orders, or to help lubricate the functioning of a society when people need things from one another. That's literally why we have money in the first place. And we've allowed that social contract lubrication to completely take over the functioning systems of our government.
Is a free market actually free when you have a handful of individuals who basically determine what the rules of this market are and who the winners and the losers are?
That's the invisible hand.
Yeah, the invisible hand. They
call themselves the invisible hand.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing there. Even in an anarchist framework, you've got the ability for people to be like, I'm going to call that out. What this person is doing is amoral, and it's about making sure that nobody, the lack of concentrated power keeps that in check. But you do meet a lot of people on the right, libertarians, who have this idea that the free market will all work it out. If you don't rein it in somehow, then it will become an absolute joke. There's no free market.
There's a reason why
controlled by a handful of people, whether it is the state or whether it is corporations.
There's a reason why our government has checks and balances in the first freaking place. It's straight up. It's one of the reasons why checks and balances within our government exists in the first place. You need to have checks and balances on systems in order to make sure that they work within parity and harmony with each other. When you allow systems to overcome one another, you get these concentrations of power where one group gets to dictate crap. All right, but I'm done. I'm done on my money isn't real.
All right. Okay, everybody. Just to summarize, money is speech, and speech ain't free. No, okay.
Yes. So, I mean, that's true. I mean, money is speech, and corporations are people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. I think let's take a quick little break. We're gonna jump back into the thick of it as soon as we get back. Maybe wrap up a little bit. There's some other things I wanted to touch on, the climate stuff. This is...
Actually, if we could come back, I would also like to touch on some climate things, too.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Y'all are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Be apparent, but hunger is a rather prominent issue amongst the student body of Western. The Invisible Need Project is a multifaceted initiative that's aimed to help struggling students. Every 2 weeks, generous people donate their food to the pantry located in the Fawn Student Service buildings or other drop-off locations. All you need to do is grab a reusable bag and grab whatever food you need to help sustain yourself. If anyone's unsure when their next meal will be, or if you have a little extra food you'd be willing to donate, the food pantry is your place. If you're looking to help donate, become a volunteer, or just learn more, call 269-387-4742 or email dosa-inp@wmich.edu for details.
Are you trying to get your local Kalamazoo business name out to the WMU and Greater Kalamazoo communities? Why not do so while supporting Radio Evolution through underwriting and donations? For more information, please visit widrfm.org.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. If you're just joining us, we've been spending first half of our hour talking about several climate change stories that have been in the news. The big conference in Bonn, Germany is going on. There's been some stuff coming out of that. We're talking about some local stories. So I know, Luke, you mentioned you wanted to hop on something. I was going to talk about another local story related to Endbridge, actually.
Yeah, you wanted to get into Endbridge. I just wanted to tap back on real quick because I did not manage to get around to it. The last article, it mentions the trends that the article says have, like, the trends they've seen happen as the 25-year course of data collection has gone on. They've seen an increase in the lack of availability of fresh water and a number of other resources that, you know, are sort of required to live. And I just kind of wanted to, like, touch on that just real quick about how about how, like, global warming is the most pressing national threat we have because lack of availability of resources drives instability, instability drives war, war drives death. And with all those ties, with global political ties and alliances and all that junk, like, you start to get into some really messy stuff. And Bernie Sanders is right. We need to address global warming.
Well,
but
yeah,
Endbridge.
And just to cap off on I think one of the most concise examples of what you were just talking about, Luke, and we've mentioned this on the show a couple times before, but if you look at the situation in Syria and particularly like the rise of ISIS, one of the big reasons that extremist groups like that are able to get such a foothold in, and it's not the only reason, a lot of it also has to do with American imperialism, but if you look specifically at what happened in Syria, you had a migration of young men, specifically from the farmlands, to the cities because there were so many droughts and so little rainfall that farms were going belly up in the Syrian region. And so they would go to the cities where there weren't enough jobs, but hey, there was this one guy who's like, hey, you hungry? You want some money? Why don't you join the Islamic State? Yeah.
I got you a case of water.
Yeah.
Case of bottled water if you want to sign up.
Oh, yeah.
Meet me down this dark back alley and don't question the AK-47s you see.
You want to fight the infidels? Catch me outside.
But Endbridge.
Yeah, but on
Moving
to
on.
Endbridge. So, two things kind of working into this story. So the Detroit Free Press was talking about this. Actually, this is from yesterday. And apparently, Endbridge says there's dozens more gaps on the Strait of Mackinaw's pipeline.
What?
Not the protective coating.
Who knew?
So
who could have guessed?
And here's the really crazy thing too, though. This guess who is actually coming around to saying, hey, maybe this oil pipeline is bad. And you're not going to believe this, ladies and gentlemen.
This is my favorite part.
Okay, so I'll read the quote. I am no longer satisfied with the operational activities and public information tactics that have become status quo for Endbridge. It is vitally important that Endbridge immediately become much more transparent about the condition of Line 5 and their activities to ensure protection of the Great Lakes. Now, who was that? Was that Abdul El Said? Was that Gretchen Whitmer?
I don't know. That was a pretty good
Congress.
That was a pretty good
Eponine or.
What's his name? Oh, God. Is that guy who called himself One Tough Nerd? Right?
Oh, it's Rick Snyder.
Yes.
The guy who poisoned the city of Flint is actually being like, hey, guys, this pipeline might
endanger our water.
Oh, yeah.
I am unsatisfied with the way Endbridge has been operating. I should watch more Snyder clips and get my Snyder impression down.
I will say, though, this actually does give me a lot of hope about the future of Line 5, because when the establishment Republicans are coming around publicly on an environmental issue, that usually means, dude.
Yeah, it usually means something's bad.
Yeah. And, this has actually been building. In our own county, it was 2 Republican votes that got the resolution against Pipeline 5, and they cited similar reasons, that economically the pipeline was a bad idea and that Endbridge has had a bad track record in the past. And I think it's particularly worth highlighting, especially with the Kalamazoo County Commission putting through their resolution against Line 5. There were a lot of people who were there to remind the commission about what happened back in 2000. Is it 10 or 11?
I think it was 10.
Yeah, back in 2000.
Back in the day, 2010.
Yeah, and if you're like maybe you're an international student or you are from out of town, but if you don't know, about 7 years ago, there was the largest inland oil spill in American history happened right here in Kalamazoo on the Kalamazoo River.
It actually wasn't. It was technically
it was
technically in Muskegon,
yeah.
But I mean, it was.
It got down to Kalamazoo.
It got down to. It polluted 35 miles of the Kalamazoo River, and the cleanup took 4 years, cost $1 billion, and Endbridge paid for maybe a tenth of that.
Oh, and also after their original cleanup, and this was discovered by several kind of watchdog journalists, particularly John Bolenbaugh, who was a former Endbridge employee, but he highlighted the fact that they basically half-assed it the first time. Had basically a bunch of oil, they just buried over it with mud and dirt. There were places where you could just stick a pole in and it would come out dripped in oil. It
just cover it up, guys. Just like shoving stuff under the bed. It counts as cleaning the room.
Yeah, and
shoving stuff under the bed counts as cleaning a room. I mean, what are you talking about?
After a lot of hem-hawing and intimidation of both, like, the journalists investigating, and they basically forced all of the residents on the river to sign this gag order where they weren't supposed to talk about it. Some of them are to talk about it anyway because they were getting migraines, chronic illnesses, pets were dying. Some of them ended up getting cancer or other very rare illnesses because of their proximity to this oil spill.
Something Aaron Brockovich level crap.
Aaron Brockovich level crap. That's right. So when Rick Snyder is talking about, the excuse me, the operational activity and public information tactics of Endbridge, that goes back a ways, and I will give him credit for actually recognizing that. And I don't know if he's trying to just salvage whatever could potentially be left of this political career, or it's like his heart grew 3 sizes that day after poisoning an entire city. So want to read a little bit more from this article. This is the Detroit Free Press, by the way. And it's written by Keith Matheny. And Endbridge thus far has completed inspections at 48 of 128 anchor locations, and the majority of these areas have coding gaps, company officials told the state Monday. A year ago, Endbridge said that there were no coding gaps on the Straits pipeline. Now there are dozens, said Valerie Brader, Executive Director for the Michigan Agency for Energy and co-chair of the State Pipeline Safety Advisory Board. Yeah. So,
I believe when one of them was reported, they're like, "Oh, it's like a Band-Aid in size. It's not that big."
man.
As information is being released about more and more protective coating gaps, those gaps are 7 inches in diameter.
7 inches
At minimum, most of them. 7 inches or more in diameter. And if I remember my math class right, that's 7 inches across. Like, no.
That's a big Band-Aid.
It's a really big band. That's like, that's not a Band-Aid, that's a gauze patch.
Yeah, it's like a gauze patch, which says that you've got a serious injury on your hands.
Like, you can't cover that up with some duct tape, man. You actually need to go get a fiberglass patch and patch that right up.
There's also reports that there are hydrostat tests. There's mussels, other living organisms on the pipes, which is not good. That means they're like eating the pipe basically, and it's corroding. And going back to the big problem, this goes to the Mackinaw Straits, and what that means ecologically is if there is a leak from that pipeline, there's literally like, potentially I could see if the Dakota Access Pipeline sprung a tremendous leak on the Mississippi River right at the top of it, that might be a bit worse. But this would pollute roughly half of the Great Lakes and make it corrosive, polluted, undrinkable. And, part of the pressure, even from a lot of right-wing people, is like there's a lot of conservatives who own a lot of property along Michigan's coastlines, and they understand tacitly if half of our lakes get polluted, what's that going to do to their tourism industry?
It's going to go away.
Yeah,
it's going to disappear. Mm-hmm. I mean, guys, we got to do something about it, because really, if we don't do anything else, we have to protect Michigan's water, because when the Earth's inevitable warm-up causes global climate crisis and global, refugee crises and all that fun stuff, we're like in the sweet spot, man. We're in a nice, mild, temperate area with a bunch of fresh water. We got to protect it. We could essentially, when the American government, inevitably falls when this happens, we can just establish the Republic of Michigan and protect our water. We can be a nation state.
Yeah, and let's remember, localizing it really well. It's like, that is going to be really important, because there's, Michigan, just if you follow the scientific projections as they go now, is probably going to be the most populous state in the country. Once the coastal cities really start feeling pressure from from the rising sea, and a lot of our Midwest and Southwest becomes unlivable because it's just too hot and dry. Like you said, we do live in a sweet spot, and the worst of
Indus Valley, baby.
This summer was basically a preview of coming attractions when it comes to climate catastrophes, and we got a little bit of it too. That unprecedented weekend of rain. That is how climate is going to impact us directly here in Southwest Michigan.
Wasn't that weekend of rain just on the heels of one of those? It was on the heels of one of those hurricanes, man. Yeah. We can't discount the amplification of weather events due to climate change on our coasts, even up here, because we experienced that as well. It's not the same. It's not the same impact. Mm-hmm. It's not the same weather. But, I remember 10, 15 years ago, over the summer hurricane season, we'd get a hurricane would hit Florida. 2 weeks later, we'd have a nice thunderstorm. This year, we had a hurricane crash into Florida and crash into Texas and absolutely demolish them. And we got flooded out.
Yeah, I think it's a microcosm of what like it's really going to look like in the future, because like I was thinking about it, it's like climate change in California. The entire state is burning. My house just burnt down. Climate change in Texas. Houston is completely underwater and there's factories leaking chemicals. Climate change in Puerto Rico.
Where is Puerto Rico?
Yeah, where is Puerto? Climate change in Kalamazoo ruined my roommate's drum set. So, it never floods in our basement. It did then. So,
I'm sorry.
well, I mean, yeah, that really is like Kalamazoo's going to be more prone to flooding, but again, we're going to be on the least of it. And if we don't protect the Great Lakes, not only is Michigan going to be screwed, but so is much of the future of the country.
Yep. Very true. Mm-hmm. So, actually, mild props to Rick Snyder for being a reasonable human being about this.
Yeah, it really.
Very mild props, though.
Yeah,
I'll shake your hand, but I'm not going to smile. It's going to be loose. Like, it's going to be one of those limp wrist handshakes.
Yeah.
Because I don't inherently respect your power. One of those.
I think it's like, thank you for listening to some sensible rich people who told you, hey, maybe we shouldn't lose the
we shouldn't lose the lakes.
Yeah.
Not because we actually need the lakes, but because, it hurts our profits.
It
but
hurts.
whatever.
Yeah.
But whatever.
We'll take that
Sometimes
one. Yeah,
people do the right things for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, think of that. Yeah, I don't know too much else to really touch. Another thing I thought was pretty interesting from this whole week with the climate stuff going on in Bonn, Germany. So, I mentioned this a little bit with like figures like Jerry Brown, but don't trust a politician's rhetoric. Trust what they actually do. Because I was listening to one of my news programs this morning. They're talking about it's very similar to Standing Rock, actually, where it's in Germany by the Ardennes Forest, and it's the largest coal mine in Europe. It's still operational, and there's a bunch of keep it in the ground activists who've been at an encampment there for the past 4 years. And it's pretty. They've got like these huge tree houses and such, but
dedication.
What they were talking about, and it was really what really hit me was like, these are the exact same things I heard in places like Standing Rock, in the climate demonstrations I've been to, with a German accent. But, our struggle is not that different from other country struggles who are still in this Paris Climate Agreement. We reported this several months ago on the show, but some of the countries that are most vocal about this green energy and Green New Deal are still doling out, tremendous fossil fuel subsidies. France is actually in the top 10.
France is up there. I remember that.
We all remember when Macron was like, "We are going to make Earth great again." Ha ha ha! Yeah, we do to be green energy. Except let's give billions to fossil fuel.
Except also let us continue to pollute our atmosphere. Oh, that's not French. That's something else.
Yeah,
I'm not going to try. I've already ruined it.
Or Justin Trudeau, who basically is a neoliberal Backstreet Boy, as we all found out.
I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I had that suspicion for the longest time because, I like Justin Trudeau the same way I like Obama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's really how I can classify it the best. I like Justin Trudeau the same way I like Obama. He's a great person, respectful, knows what he's talking about when he speaks on things because he's a man who does his homework.
That is true. I respect his intelligence.
Yeah, I respect his intelligence. I respect the fact that he is pretty much correct on domestic and social issues within Canada and within Canada's politics. Generally, the idea I get is, I would agree with him. If I was actually living as a Canadian, I would probably agree with him on most policies. But then, we find out that, Paradise, he's in the Paradise Papers. Mm-hmm. He's pushing for his foreign policies very similar to what Bill Clinton's foreign policy was, what Obama's foreign policy was. So, I like Justin Trudeau the same way I like Obama. Dude's all right. He needs to set himself straight.
Oh, yeah. And, what I was referring to specifically is his decision to allow the Trans-Canadian pipeline to be built through native lands.
Again, I like Justin Trudeau the same way I like Obama.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Straight up the same way, because even though it's a little different over here on the southern side of the border, it's still sort of the same.
Oh yeah, and that's something that some of the people at the summit have been calling out. It's a nice kumbaya thing, and I think to Trump's credit, he really has gotten the rest of the world to get a little bit more serious on these targets, but again, there's still there's a lot of talk, and again, we've got to do more. I mean, this was the island summit that they're doing over in Germany. A lot of these countries like Fiji who are leading it will be underwater if we don't hit these targets. And particularly, there's another study that just showed we have underestimated grossly the amount of time we really have left before that happens. There was a study that showed Europe will basically has about 9 years where they can continue using fossil fuels before the climate impacts are so destructive that we'll lose most of our coastal cities and we'll lose a lot of our islands. And we've already seen decisions like that in the United States. Like Josh Fox, quite famously, well, not famously enough, but he was on the platform committee, and when they voted, I can't remember exactly what they voted against. I think it was a pipeline measure or a CO2 commitment. Oh, it was carbon tax. But basically said, these people are voting to let their own states go underwater, their own cities go underwater,
Look, guys, I like post-apocalyptic stories, games, and settings as much as the next guy. But at the same time, I don't want to live in one.
Not every city has business with conditions like Venice, and I don't think a lot in New York City would do very well under
Venice is gone. Climate change climate change impact means Venice doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It is a city built on the water. It's been consistently sinking for years.
By the way, I need to get there.
You need to get there before it disappears. Yeah. Before it
next
slips
Euro
under the
trip.
waves.
Yeah, that's. Oh man. All right. Let's see. It's about 6:56. We could probably go ahead and do a quick break. Let's switch up topics a little bit. You are listening to the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Lighter is.
I ain't getting out of bed today. 9 to 5 to survive. There's gotta be a better way than waking up.
Lighter is. Lighter is.
Living lonely is
Wider is. Wider is Radio Evolution.
Wider is proud to be supported by Pedal Bicycle. Pedal Bicycle has 2 locations, on 611 West Michigan Ave and 185 Romans Road. More information can be found at pedalbicycle.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in just a sec. Gotta run a quick errand, and then we will get back into discussion. And I'm thinking, Luke, do you want to talk about the Democratic Party and like Joe Biden and all that stuff?
Oh man,
Yeah.
let me. All right,
You could even say we've been biding our time to talk about this. Oh,
ouch! That one hurt.
yeah.
That one, right there. Oh,
All right.
I'm gonna use that one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use that one again.
Oh dear. Okay. Well,
Do your thing.
I'll
ramble on for a couple minutes.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I gotta call Igor real quick.
Yeah.
All right.
So, I don't know why, but the Democratic Party is really completely missing the point that left populism is pretty much the way to go in terms of winning elections. People said that they would have rather voted for Joe Biden over Hillary Clinton in 2016. They wished that he had run. He was convinced not to. It was because it was Hillary's turn. Whatever. He's thinking about, there's noise that he might run again in 2020, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Joe Biden, I love you, dude, but you're as establishment as the rest of them. You're as in deep into the system as anybody else. Like, I respect the fact that you respect the fact that people should have a choice when it comes to their bodily autonomy, and you respect the fact that abortion is just straight up legal in America. But at the same time, like, your stance on social issues does not overshadow the fact that I don't trust you to attack Wall Street, and I don't trust you to regulate Wall Street or to pull us out of the wars that we sit in. You can't, like.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish up, Luke.
You can't, like. One of the things I loved about the 2016 election was the Barack and Joe memes. The Barack and Joe memes in the era of Trump meme magic were really my silver lining. They were the thing that made me smile at the end of every horrific day where Trump was shown leading the polls, where Trump won another primary, where truly they were my heart and soul and the thing that got me through last year. Joe, your meme magic requires Barack Obama. You are the friendly old uncle who has everyone's best intentions in mind, but you might do it in a way that people might not be completely happy with. I need you to sit down and be done. You just need to call it a day. You tried to run for president in 2004?
It's 2008.
2008.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he had a bid before that. I remember reading. He had a bid in 2008 where he dropped because of a vocal gaffe about his would-be president, his would-be president as vice president later that year. But it's...
and by the way, to quote, and this is Biden, I mean, you've got the first sort of mainstream African-American who is articulate and bright and clean and a nice-looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man, you know.
I mean, again, the nice old uncle who has the best intentions, but might say something that ticks a couple people off, and it makes them not vote for you. I can't risk voting for someone who might do that if they are not 100% on policy issues that are going to win 100% of the time. You're part of the establishment, man. I love you, but you need to sit down. You need to give up the reins. You're done.
Yeah, and kind of jumping off of that, I think one of the reasons the establishment is oscillating around Joe Biden is, well, frankly, he is one of the few establishment Democrats left who can carry on a conversation with a common person and sound credible. Everyone else at this point sounds like a robot or some sort of weird pod person. I mean, just look at do you remember that famous picture when Hillary was in this normal, was looking at a normal kitchen and she just had this deer in the headlights look? Where am I? Yeah.
I remember that. I remember seeing it with the caption, "So this is how the poors live."
Oh, yes. And granted, he's got,
he's got a charisma about him. He's got that, he's got a likability about him. People, again, I like Joe Biden. I like him as a person. But I don't expect him to have the policy stances and the fire to push for policy agenda that will inherently benefit people and benefit and will help create victory for the Democratic Party. I don't believe that he will do that. I believe that it's going to be the same old.
Yeah, and there's this Beltway echo chamber that, you heard Bill Maher say it when he was interviewing Don in Brazil.
Oh, screw Bill Maher.
He was Bernie and Hillary's policies weren't that different. Yes, they were. Yeah, they were really a lot different.
They might not have been so different at the end of the day. When all was said and done at the end of the primary, because
Somebody pushed the platform to the left.
Yeah, because Bernie Sanders pushed the platform to the left and got progressives on the committees when the Democratic convention met to rewrite their rules and rewrite their platform and all of that thing. Yeah, at the end of the day, the Democratic platform is the Bernie Sanders platform, because the Bernie Sanders platform pushed the Democratic Party to the left. Hillary Clinton didn't do it. Joe Biden didn't do it. Nancy Pelosi didn't do it. Chuck Schumer didn't do it. None of those people moved the party left. Bernie Sanders moved the party left.
Mm-hmm. And it's still and when we say pull, we mean tug of war.
We're talking dragging, kicking, and screaming. No, I don't want to give up big donors. Yeah. No, the oil lobby money is way too good. Yeah. No, I can't. Why can't I have this anymore?
Just fingers in the dirt. No,
classic Looney Tunes. Yeah. Finger claw marks in the ground,
and eventually they're going to run out of Tom Perez's to keep throwing it, try to keep digging.
How many Tom Perez's does the DNC need to throw into the blender of the base in order to appease them?
I will say this much, and this kind of this is the same topic, but I'm kind of broadening it a little bit. It's and we talk on the show about whether Dem enter or start a new party or strengthen the Greens or just focus on a revolutionary movement outside of electoral politics altogether. But the common thread through all of those is the collective political will, particularly of the left, is shifting left, and they are not going back to the center. They're not gonna basically be complacent or be fooled again.
We're done with center-right establishment politics, man. We're done with it. I can't do it anymore. Yeah. I can't. Because again, I have conversations like this with my dad every so often. My dad, who was a card-carrying Republican up until 2008. Is now a Democrat because, from his own mouth, Democrats are what Republicans were 40 years ago.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's right.
I love my dad. I love him to death. I can't do neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is it's an ideology that continues to fail and continues to allow the extremist right to gain ever more control.
Right, because it's been, and Biden's a part of this. Their focus on professionalism and their focus on basically consolidating resources towards the professional, enlightened class, elite class.
It's the elite. To broaden the scope a little more, I have a bad habit of getting into Facebook back and forths with people because I'm a terrible person. I hate myself.
Yep.
But recently, the Democratic gathering that happened this last Saturday.
Was it the Unity Commission or
not the Unity? Sam was there.
Oh,
he made a post about it.
Oh, right, yeah.
I commented.
Michigan State Central Committee.
Yeah, the Michigan State Central Committee. I believe there was an election. There was a delegate position open for someone, and a left progressive member of the Democratic Party put their name up for it and was shot down, not because they had bad ideas, not because they were unqualified, but because they voted for Jill Stein in the 2016 election.
Oh, yeah.
And that's wrong. I'm sorry. That is
something similar happened at go ahead, but
yeah. I bring the story up to men, when we talk about the centralization of control within the elite class, this is part of it. You don't want people in power, in positions where they can wield power against the establishment elite class when you inherently disagree with the elite class that controls the party. They don't want that. And denying people, especially left progressives, access to platforms of the party where they can actually enact change and get other Democrats elected on left progressive policies, you just continue that elitism. A lot of regular, everyday conservative people, good conservative folk, believe that one of the reasons why the Democratic Party is just ugly and shameful and they'll never vote for them is because they truthfully believe that the Democrats would rather have the elites have the power than to spread it out democratically.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And this is an example of it. And if the party wants to win, they have to stop it.
Yeah, and look, here's the thing about Joe Biden in particular, and there's this great CNBC article where they really delve into the problems of him running in 2016, and there are twin impulses inside the Democratic Party right now, and here's what they are. People are demanding someone who will go left, go back to the worker-centered New Deal style politics that used to be the Democratic Party's bread and butter, and they're also we talk about identity politics on the program, but a lot, but they're not. It's not always through a negative lens. We're taught, especially in a lot of the issues we've been talking about lately, the visibility of what have you? Who has been successful? It has been, trans folks, black folks, LGBT folks, Muslim folks who run on these progressive platforms. And there's this understanding that the Democratic Party needs to embrace candidates who are not from the same white male stockpile of politicians. And Joe Biden is a carbon copy of he's old white guy politician number 572. Yeah, exactly.
You line them up from right to left, you're just kind of like, all of these guys really look the same. I mean, Mitch McConnell doesn't, but that's because he's not really an old white guy. He's actually a turtle dressed up in a human suit.
But he's folksy, Luke, and we've seen him talk to blue-collar people without insulting them, so he must be the perfect candidate.
Oh, man. If that's the bar is so low that I could do that.
Yeah. And, another thing we should mention, too, and, this hardly ever gets discussed, is, the left is pretty tired of war, and even, there's this kind of weird cognitive dissonance where I've met a lot of Democrats who are anti-war, and they really don't understand their own party's complicity in keeping this going. But Joe Biden, he's not going to be any lesser than Barack Obama. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of historical testimony that shows Biden was one of the people that pulled Obama right when it came on foreign policy. There's this famous anecdote from, there's this great book called National Security and Double Government, which really, it focuses around the question of why was Obama's foreign policy so similar to Bush's, and it goes into talk about the military-industrial complex, but at a specific meeting with some top-ranking generals.
Top men.
Barack Obama wanted a pullout from Afghanistan, and they said their ultimatum that they answered back was, we can either add a lot more troops or slightly less more troops. And it was Joe Biden who talked to Obama after he stormed out of the Oval Office and got him to come back in and basically say, less more troops. So
your options are more troops and less more troops.
Yeah.
I would like option C. No more troops.
No more troops. That's not
an option, sir.
Yeah.
Why? I'm the president.
Yeah. And it's fun if you read further in the book. Like, no, it's not like they overtly said like we'll have the CIA take you out. Although I'm not gonna dismiss that entirely.
Let's not get into those weeds.
Yeah. That's a forest right there. But what they do is we're getting a little off topic, but I just want to kind of cap that off. There is, a lot of these generals, they'll use their expertise as a cudgel. Basically the way they presented to Obama was kind of like, you're just, no offense, sir, but you're a civilian. You're from, you're basically like this senator from Illinois. Like they give you like, this is how the world really works conversation.
I hate those conversations because because they're not conversations, they're lectures, and they inherently assume that your worldview is invalid.
Yeah. And
I hate that.
And so to get it back to to Joe Biden, he represents that, he's cemented in that worldview. Like, what's happened since Trump was elected is the attention to civilian life has gotten a lot more crass and a lot more cruel, but the policies are all basically the same.
Yep.
Yeah. And what would Joe Biden do? Maybe kill, a handful less civilians, but
he'd keep Obamacare.
Yeah, he'd keep Obamacare.
He'd keep Obamacare.
And he'd probably, I was talking, to someone about this who posted like I would support Joe Biden in 2020, and I brought up the war thing, and I also said like, I might consider it if he had like a bold World War II scale climate change platform, but I will bet you, the future of the planet. No, whatever climate thing they come up with is not going to be satisfactory to the reality of what we need. And let's go back to the election. Now, despite everything that happened, and look, I was pretty dang mad about the rigging of the primary. Something a lot of people don't understand about that is...
Was mad, still mad.
It wasn't that they screwed Bernie Sanders. They screwed me. I canvassed my butt off and gave him a lot of my money. DNC owes me a refund, and you know what? They want to make up for it. I want to see Tom Perez go out and canvass for one of my campaigns, okay? Anyway... actually, no, I wouldn't, because he'd do a terrible job.
Yeah, he would do a terrible job. What are you talking about?
So why should I vote for your guy? Well, he'll put Hope back on the ballot.
He's a better candidate with better ideas.
Yeah.
Better pizza, Papa John's.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But, I would say, let's boil down every election before this. And I've always been cynical and somewhat woke. And I've been I'll just vote for whoever seems the most competent overseer of the empire. And that's why I voted for Obama twice. But in this election, 2016, I've read the science articles, said we've got until 2020 to stop irreversible climate change. And Hillary didn't offer that. Her climate platform was a slower and more comfortable descent into
the best we can do for him is make him comfortable.
Yeah. And a lot of people will dismiss that in the aftermath. It was her climate platform is terrible, and I don't see Joe Biden's being any different, and I don't really see Kamala Harris's being any different either. And that's another kind of establishment person they've
performed. Honestly, if the candidate is being backed by the establishment, I probably don't. I inherently don't trust them when it comes to climate policy. Mm-hmm. I just straight up don't, because we need someone aggressive on that shit.
And like I was just saying, some of the most left-leaning aggressive talkers when it comes to climate leadership on this planet, like Trudeau, like Macron, are actually behind the scenes doing things to strengthen the fossil fuel industry and perpetuate our reliance on fossil fuels and carbon emissions. So
did we have something else to touch on for Democrats? Just some junk, something about a top Democratic donor saying if the Democratic Party moves to the left, he will cut off their funding.
Yeah,
something about that. That's hey guys, that thing that you hate the Republicans for doing?
Let me pull up the clip real quick.
Oh God.
Okay,
it's amazing.
Hold on just a second. All right, fiddle with this audio a little bit.
They're killing everybody.
All right. Oh, where is it? There it is.
That the Democrats are going with.
It's so effing wrong.
Whoa.
I've talked to Schumer. I've talked to Wyden. I've talked to Pelosi.
And said what?
And I said, if you use the term billion again, I'm done.
Billionaire.
Why?
Because it's aspirational. I didn't start with anything. Just penalize everyone that's done well. We all want to do well. And we should be the party of doing well. We should be a party of business and leadership. And it is very, very disturbing when I hear the millionaire or billionaire word. And I've told them to stop it, knock it off.
All right, so let's give you a little bit of context there. That was Stephen Klubeck, who is the chairman and CEO of Diamond Resorts International.
Ugh.
Yeah. So you get somebody who owns a bunch of resorts is definitely going to have a even keeled perspective on income inequality. But
see, this dude donates to the Democratic Party, and he's one of their big dollar donors. I bet he dumps bunches of money into super PACs. Bunches. I bet he caps out his individual donation and then just starts rolling money into the super PACs.
You know,
guarantee it.
No, Are you
gonna open secrets?
I'm gonna go to opensecrets.com right now and look this dude up. That's all right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because the thing that gets me is his points about it being, quote, so effing wrong, unquote. All of those are right-wing talking points. Every single one of those is a right-wing talking point. Why do you want to penalize the people who've done well? If you've done well, then you have more. If you have more, you have more to share. I'm sorry. When you have more, you don't build a taller fence, you build a bigger table. I think that's in the Bible. I don't know. I've never read it. That's a lie. I've read it. But claiming that asking people who have more to contribute more is not inherently unfair. It's not. It's not inherently unfair to ask people who have more to give more because you have more to give. You have more to give. You have more resources. We would like you to contribute your weight to the system because obviously you don't draw the same amount from these systems as other people might, and we need you to help your community, your national community. Because, like, every single time the phrase taxation is theft comes up to me, I want to punch it in its frickin' face. Because taxation is not theft. Taxation is contributing to the society and the community in which you live. And if we want to have this strong national identity, you need to pay your taxes and contribute to American society that way. You need to monetarily contribute. I monetarily contribute. I'm going to see my taxes go up 2% if the Trump tax plan passes, and honestly I don't think that's okay. Like, that's money that comes out of my pocket for living, literally to survive, when there are people who make 10 to 20 to 30 times I do, who don't need all that money. You don't need all that money. What do you need all that money for?
Why do you
need all this money?
Why? Well,
what are you using it for?
Well,
is it just sitting in a bank account?
The problem is when the meritocratic, the Democrats really, in the last couple of decades, since you had like the Democratic Leadership Council in the 80s, who basically merged a lot of kind of Reagan's ideas with neoliberal economics, and
we should be the party of aspiration. People should aspire to be more, and if they can be more, then they could be like me. We're the party of aspiration. We shouldn't punish people who do well by themselves, who pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
Yeah,
are you a Republican? Because that's what a Republican would say,
basically. And like, what's the difference now? Because there have been Democrats who say it's like, well, talent will float to the top and they will get the biggest slice of the pie. And there's literally Democrats who parrot that line. Now, Democrats or Republicans say that too, but I guess they're meaner about it. And
it's because they generally use the bootstraps phrase. Everybody knows that one. Democrats use a different code.
And by the way, so this Klubeck guy is given about $1.6 million in the last election cycle alone to...
he's definitely someone who totally has the best interests of everyone at heart.
Oh, and gave $100,000 of that was to a super PAC supporting Kamala Harris. But why don't we trust her, Luke? Bernie bros, why don't you trust Kamala Harris?
Why are you so sexist? Why are you against Hillary Clinton? Why are you against Kamala Harris? Why are you against these female candidates who
actually don't believe in anything that I believe in and actually stand...
maybe it's because this guy named Klubeck gave $1 million to Hillary Clinton and goes on national television and says, when Democrats insult billionaires like me, it makes me so sad and angry. And
if the Democratic Party goes left, I'm pulling my funding
out.
If they go left, if they use the word billionaire one more time, I'm sorry, are you a billionaire? I guess that accurately describes you.
Yeah, and there are billionaires who aren't crybabies about this. Like Warren Buffett has gone on to say he's one of the richest guys in America. I think he is one of three.
Yeah, he is one of the 3 richest Americans in the country, i.e., one of the 3 people who owns as much wealth of the country as the bottom 50% of the country.
And he's very candid about it. He's like, there was a class war and my class won, but people like this Klubeck guy, they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be, super rich and have us like, oh, you're so great for being super rich. You're such a nice guy because you give such brilliant
donate
good causes
to the Republican Party.
Yeah, seriously.
If you want to spout crap that would fall out of a Republican donor's mouth, like, don't tax the rich just because I'm rich. Don't move left because if you move left, it goes against the economic policies that I believe in that made me rich. just go donate to the Republicans and leave. We don't want your money. We don't want your money. Go away.
Well, we don't want your money, but there are
okay. There are people who want your money. Yeah. There are people who want your money. Their names are Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Tom Perez.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was wondering, could we just you know what? I'll tell you what, Steve Klubeck. You want to help out? You want to help the Democratic Party? Bribe those people with so much money that they will just leave the rest of us alone forever. Give Dianne Feinstein enough money to retire.
You know what? Yeah. Do us all a solid and go buy your island.
Go
buy a private island. Just go live there. Mm-hmm. Just take all your stuff. Go live there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Make your own. You can declare yourself your own country if you do that. By the way,
you know what, Hillary Clinton, go buy one of those islands. No, she should get one of the islands that's going to sink into the ocean, and then maybe she'll care about climate change. Oh man! All right, I think it's about time for another break. So let's do that, and when we come back, we'll get back into it. We've got a few more things to discuss. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution.
Alvan Humane Society is a non-for-profit, no-kill animal shelter that has been serving Allegan, Van Buren, and surrounding areas for almost 50 years. They are hosting their Cares Fund Drive and are over halfway to their $500,000 goal. Alvan can currently house around 30 dogs and 100 cats. Money raised from the Cares campaign will go to build a new shelter, which will expand this capacity by 20%. Alvan Humane Society has 20 dogs and 40 cats that are microchipped, spayed and neutered, and fully vaccinated, ready for adoption right now. To adopt a pet, donate to the Cares Fund Drive, or find out more, feel free to visit them on the web at www.al-van.org.
Wider FM is supported in part by local Kalamazoo and Greater West Michigan businesses like yours. If you are interested in getting your business's name on the air while supporting Radio Evolution, please visit widerfm.org for underwriting packages and other support options.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. This is the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo, your only source for political revolution. So we've got a couple of statewide stories, and I said shooty, but actually, let's follow up. This really coincides
with last week. Oh my goodness!
Yeah. So one of the big points we were talking about the Michigan bill, and here's actually something. If any of you listeners out there, if you go to the pro-KZoo community discussion, one of the biggest things they focused on is how this bill basically allow for concealed carry in gun-free zones. That's bad. But one of the worst parts of the bill to me was the fact that it will allow people accused of domestic violence to purchase firearms.
I mean, but a good guy with a gun can stop a bad guy with a gun, Andy.
Oh yeah.
But a good guy, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Well,
Turns out,
nope.
Turns out the majority of in the majority of cases that's not true, including.
This happened on November 12th, or no, November 11th. I'm sorry, and I'll describe this. Was from Marysville, Michigan. A woman died Saturday night after she was shot inside a St. Clair County business by her 34-year-old husband, who later shot and killed himself. The shooting took place around 5:30 p.m. November 11th when the suspect traveled to Jumpin' Jam, a business with games for children similar to Chuck E. Cheese on Gradient Boulevard. As officers arrived at the scene, Buckmaster said, as you can probably imagine, there was just mass hysteria. What do you think? And with a few dozen children and adults who are celebrating a birthday party at the business owned by the victim, Cheryl L. Pilarowski, 32 years old. And what they found out was that her husband was the one who shot her at point blank range. And this happened right in front of their 4 and 9-year-old children. The 4 and 9-year-old child from the victim's previous relationship. And apparently, the witnesses told them that the victim and the perpetrator were a couple. They'd married in April. They'd fought in the parking lot of the business earlier in the day, and the victim planned on moving out to their Kimball Township home in the near future. And, basically, what they found out was this couple, this guy, had a history of this kind of stuff. And again,
weird. You mean a domestic abuser being abusive? What, to someone? Wait. You're telling me that domestic abuse doesn't just live at home? It can come out into the world where it can affect other people.
Just think about those kids who had to see that. Not only that, but all the other this is like a Chuck E. Cheese type business, so I'm assuming there was probably a few dozen kids and parents who had to see this guy walk in with a gun and
congratulations. We have a law. He did it legally too.
Yeah.
Due to the law that passed that essentially allows people to carry a firearm wherever the heck they want. Him carrying it into a place of business that serves families and children. Walks into this place and traumatizes children. Traumatizes their parents and murders someone. And one of the reasons why he could do that is because he could walk in the door without anyone seeing his gun.
Yeah, and again, we were harping on Margaret O'Brien in the last show, but I'm gonna pick it up again. I don't care how much money you get from the gun lobby. I don't care how conservative you are on gun. My dad is he is a single issue voter. He votes based on gun control. He voted for Donald Trump for that reason. But he and basically every other rank and file NRA person I know said no, domestic abusers should not have access to firearms. Yet our legislators, they don't abide by any kind of common sense or decency when it comes to gun legislation. It boils down to who is funding them, and it is disgusting. It is we talked about how callous it was for this vote to happen right after what happened in Texas, and guess what? A couple of days after that,
this
across
wasn't the only
state.
This wasn't the only one, right? Wasn't there another one?
Was there?
I remember seeing stuff for one, and it was either for this one or for someone else, and it just blows my mind because again, I want to state that I hate myself and I get into Facebook arguments with people on the internet, especially internet strangers.
Yeah,
I'm not of sound mind and sound body because I do this to myself.
You must have a masochistic side to you, really.
A little bit, teeny teeny bit of a masochist over here.
I wonder if there's like a new Hellraiser sequel comes out, and it's just like sitting at a computer arguing with centrists.
Arguing
will come to know my pain.
Arguing with centrists is my personal hell.
Yeah.
But I've spent the last couple days in a back and forth with a group, essentially defending the point that no, gun control is good and reduces gun violence and reduces gun death because it controls access to lethal weaponry.
Yeah, and sorry, there is proof. There's proof of that.
Yeah,
Sorry,
anybody who says that gun control doesn't work has not looked at Japan, Australia, England, Germany, Denmark, Finland, any number of other countries that actually have strict gun control laws to see that gun control works. To be fair, I'm not stating that any of those solutions are solutions for America 100%. Like, that's not the case. It's the case that when people say gun control doesn't work, doesn't stop gun crime, doesn't stop gun violence, doesn't stop gun death, they are 100% factually wrong. But this goes to show that gun control is important because with laws that allow people to walk around with concealed carry wherever they want to go, means that now we're not risking mass shootings. We're not risking the increased mass shootings with this law. We're not. Instead, we're increasing the risk of single victim gun deaths. That's what we're increasing the risk. We're increasing the risk of intimate, deadly violence.
In a huge public place like this. Like, let's talk about, like, okay, look, nobody's trying to, and, obviously this has been a thing that NRA has been doing for years.
Nobody's trying to take the liberals are not trying to take your guns away. That's a straw man. He belongs out in the cornfield in Illinois where you got him.
As a matter of fact, sometimes they open carry to protect other liberals from Nazis, but that's another story. But let's look at the fact that, like, nobody's asking for us to have, like, a ban on guns like, some countries in Europe do. I remember when I traveled to Europe, a lot of people there asked me why we don't just have an outright ban, and I would then laugh for about 5 minutes and be like, it's an American thing. Just, trust me. And, like, a lot of people say, like, Australia is like a close analog, right? And it's like, yeah, but even there, like, we have this ingrained sense of, like, what people don't understand about guns is, like, it's basically the last chance check and balance. That's kind of the way it's written. That's the way people have interpreted it through the years. As, like, we have the right to collect arms so that if the government ever gets too oppressive, we can rise up against them. And of course, that's something that's kind of been co-opted by right-wing anti-government figures.
It's funny, honestly, it's funny that the people who are most afraid of the government that wants to take their guns
are the most blindly nationalistic.
And are the most susceptible to subscribing to an ideology where the government becomes an authoritarian, oppressive regime.
Yep.
Whoa. Irony.
So what we saw with this shooting here, though, was our doing. It's worse than doing nothing because you've made it easier for events like this to occur. Because it was his legal right to go into that kid's place, open carrying, and you know what? I guess, like, what people have to just wonder, like, well, he's either here to shoot someone or he just really likes gun rights. And if that was at least illegal, people would know the moment he walked in, oh my God, he's here with a gun. That is illegal. You're not supposed to do that. Something is wrong. And could have somebody stopped it? Well, who knows? But every second can count in a situation like that. And by making something like that normalized and permissible, you are making the world, you are making Michigan a more dangerous place to live.
100%. Like, and that's the other thing with the whole the only person who can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun myth. Most of the people who say that are living in this fantasy world where they know how they will react 100% of the time in every single possible situation. I mean, I've done it. I've had those daydreams, those grandiose daydreams of saving people and being the hero of the day and stopping a bad guy. Like, I've had those. That's why I play D&D.
Yeah.
It's why I actually keep it in a fantasy world. Because even if I went and got myself licensed and legal to carry a gun and bought a gun and carried it around with me 100% of the time, with no training into how to deal with an active shooter, with no training in how to respond to panic, with no training how to respond to the chaos an active shooter brings, I actually have no idea how I will react in any of those situations until I experience them. And that is the case for the majority of gun owners. Like, the grand majority of gun owners do not know what it will be like to find themselves in an active shooter situation. Like, Las Vegas. And I'm gonna bring up the shooting in Las Vegas here for a number of reasons. One, it has affected someone who's very close to a coworker of mine, and because I care about people, I care about him. He was at that shooting. Like, he was in the crowd being shot at. He's a gun owner. He's a open carry advocate. Members of the band and members of the stage crew, members of the crew have guns, carry at shows. None of them knew what to freaking do because none of them had found, like, none of them. Okay, I'll rephrase that because I don't know if the friend of a coworker I'm actually talking about has been there. I want to restate that. I don't know that, but at least from the experiences given, the accounts given by the band and the stage crew, none of them knew what to do. And once they figured out what the heck was actually going on, they knew that the guns they had were going to be useless.
Yeah, I mean, there was a sharpshooter from the
400 yards away, 36 stories up.
Yeah.
And like, it's one of these things where until you experience it or you experience an event like that, you will have absolutely no idea how you will react, what your fight or flight response is going to make you do, how you're going to react to the situation, where you're going to do, or where you're going to go, what you're going to do, how, like, who you're going to go to. Like, are you going to duck for cover? Or are you going to run around with your head cut off? Are you going to immediately rush into wherever the chaos is the most in order to try and pull as many people out of the crush as possible? Like, you don't know without training. And even then, the reason why people with training are effective in these situations is because their mind blanks, their training takes over, it's muscle memory.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, again, like we said it last week, not everyone is Rambo.
Specifically, no one is Rambo.
Yeah. Oh, well, maybe Rambo is, but Rambo's a fictional character. I'm sorry.
Rambo's a fictional character. Not even Sylvester Stallone is Rambo.
No, if Sylvester Stallone was in a situation like, hey, what's going on?
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah,
Adrian.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So, I'm sorry.
All right. Let's stop on this last article while we got time.
So the big one.
Our prospective next governor had some fun things to say about former prisoners, and
I'm not voting for this guy 100%. I'm sorry. Prisoners are still people, dude.
But he's currently the state attorney general, and he's going to be running for Michigan governor next year, endorsed by Trump. Yeah, has his seal of approval. And let me give you the context here. So, the Michigan Constitution states no person shall be denied the equal protection of the law. But the legislature decided that doesn't apply to prisoners. The case is a class action suit representing male juveniles who allege they were raped and otherwise sexually assaulted by older prisoners and that guards knew of the assaults. It also alleges that some guards groped the teenage prisoners. The case was filed in 2013, and the Attorney General's office has filed dozens of appeals seeking stays, which have dragged the case out. And going further, this is on the state's response to the rape allegations, and this is from Dan Korbkin, and he's the Deputy Legal Director of the ACLU of Michigan. And he said, the Attorney General's office is so frightened of this case that they filed over a dozen appeals at every juncture trying to get it thrown out. The real question is, why aren't they investigating these very serious allegations of really what amounts to widespread human rights abuses in our prisons? And why don't they want to give vulnerable youth their day in court to either prove their case or not prove their case? They reached out to AG Bill Schuette's office for comment, but the office declined, citing pending litigation. So
in a word, it is a compounding of our inhumane prison system in the first place. Good going. What is it? 13th Amendment? 13th Amendment.
Yeah.
Good going, 13th Amendment.
And well, it's a violation of our state constitution too, because essentially they're pushing and pushing and pushing this, which there's no reason for them to be doing that, and the fact that they are, it's again, like, it's a flashpoint issue where they will be forced to put their values on the table, and their values basically say, punish the criminal. If the criminal is living in a hellhole, well, so be it. They
deserve it because, well, they deserve it because they're a criminal. They deserve hard labor because they're a criminal. They deserve to work for almost nothing because they're a criminal. Like, I can't support anybody who sees prisoners as less than human because they're criminals. I can't. Criminals are people too. Like 100%. Are they criminals? Yes. They committed crime. That's what a criminal does. Are they still people? Should they still be granted their human rights? Should they still be granted the rights? Should they still be granted their constitutional rights? Yes. Yes, they should.
Yeah.
And not after they get out of prison. Not just while they're in prison, their rights need to be respected within reason.
Who said, I can't remember who, it's a very famous quote though, you can tell how civilized a nation is by the way it treats its prisoners. But yeah, and again, like, well,
we have a prison system that's literally based on slavery because the 13th Amendment allows for slavery to be an acceptable punishment for crime, even though I would think somebody could make a very convincing argument that slavery is cruel and unusual in any circumstance. I'm just...
And it's, again, like, they don't... It's about not caring how prisoners get treated by other prisoners. It's like turning a blind eye because otherwise it's too much of a hassle. And again, it's a part of this attitude that, like, prison is supposed to be this hellish place.
Prison is supposed to be a punishment. Prison is like, no, you're not supposed to have comfortable beds. No, you're not supposed to have, like, and this goes to an issue that the Michigan justice system was facing not too long ago about female sanitary products in prisons, and how they weren't in prisons and they had to fight like hell to have.
They had to, like, buy them from the commissary. Yeah, like it's like a candy bar.
It should be. It's like, do I spend my commissary money on the 3 candy bars that I told Latrice I would get her today in favor for whatever prison favor, or do I buy sanitary pads so I can keep myself clean and healthy while my period flows? I mean, like, it's the same kind of complete disregard for human dignity. These boys are being sexually assaulted.
Yeah, and again, this is not like adult prison we're talking about. We're talking about juvenile facilities.
Yeah. These boys are being sexually assaulted. That's a crime. I don't care if they're prisoners. That's a crime.
As we've seen lately, I guess conservatives are a lot more blasé about pedophilia than we've heard.
Thanks, Roy Moore. But anyway, no, like, these boys have had crimes committed on them. Prisoners get their sentences increased or, added to. If they commit crimes in prison, why are the people who are supposed to be making sure that the prisoners act accordingly and behave themselves and aren't a danger to themselves and others not being held accountable for crimes they commit against prisoners?
Well, I mean...
Is it because they're criminals?
There's a twofold answer to that question, and one is like... and this is a big problem in especially the state of Michigan, where we'll have a lot of unqualified or underqualified prison guards hired, and also racially disproportionate. There's a lot of white prison guards who get hired in who are basically racist, and they really don't care how a lot of, particularly prisoners of color, get treated, or non-white prisoners, I should say. I don't like using the term person of color. It's very it's kind of in vogue right now, but it reminds me too much of the 50s. But anyway,
it's also like, I just, the other thing is that this is only going to compound these boys' lives.
Yeah.
They're already being tried, and they're being tried as adults for crimes they've committed, yes. But abusing them does not lend itself to rehabilitation. It does not lend itself to making sure that these boys become good members of society, which is what prison is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a separation of people who commit crime and the rest of society in order to, ideally reintegrate those people who have committed crimes back into society where they are productive and live in relative harmony with other people. It's not about, I agree it needs to be punishment, but there's a degree of punishment that needs to be undertaken, and
focus on rehabilitation.
And punishment is like the punishment is you can't go anywhere. The punishment is you are now on a set schedule. You don't get to eat until we tell you to. You don't get to go outside until we tell you to. You have to stay in this area until we tell you to. You shower when we tell you to. We tell you what to eat. That's the punishment. The punishment is you don't get to make your own decisions about your day-to-day life, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, loss of autonomy.
But loss of autonomy. Honestly, I feel like loss of autonomy is punishment enough. And even then, dependent on behavior and case, there are prisoners who have free time, who, spend that time studying in the library or, working on a project, depending on your prison. And it's rehabilitative measures like that, education, counseling, classes, that help people not do more crime.
Mm-hmm. So, we've got a few minutes left on the program. So just wrapping up with Bill Schuette. I'll let you say anything else you want to say about it too, Luke. But just remember, handy little voting guide for 2018. Remember, gubernatorial candidate Bill Schuette thinks it's totally okay for juvenile prisoners to get sexually assaulted. Why not?
I mean, it sort of does follow the trend of today's Republicans, or at least, okay, I'm going to walk that back in a second. It follows the trend of Republicans coming out as terrible people when it comes to sexual abuses and sexual misconduct.
Well, I mean, to be fair, I mean, what are the things okay, go ahead, I'm sorry. Well,
because I really do, and since we have a couple minutes, I really did want to point at Roy Moore and how absolutely freaking terrible he is.
Oh, God.
And a good chunk of the Republican Party is going, hey, man, the 14-year-old came onto him.
And if you're gonna point out how gross this is, let's destroy a bunch of coffee machines. Buy them first and then destroy them. Yeah.
I'm a member of the right wing, and I know how to hold a good. I know how to good economic boycott things.
Yeah, the right can't meme, and they sure as heck can't boycott. Like they did, they said same thing. Like,
thanks for
who bought all those Kaepernick jerseys? Yeah,
we hate your albums, so we're gonna buy them all from the stores and then burn them in a big pile. That's nice. Thanks for your money.
That was a line in the Straight Outta Compton, wasn't it?
Yep.
It's like they're looking at all these white people burning Straight Outta Compton, and they were like, well, they bought all those records, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, well, we got their money. Yeah. Bye.
And I will say, like, in kind of a brighter sense, we're talking about this today, but we're really we are in this kind of flashpoint moment where, people, even more so than like a year ago, this fall has been the autumn of, there's a witch hunt. The witches are hunting you. If you're a predator. And
the straw feminists are after you.
Yeah, even I would say, like, yeah, you've got like these silly right wing people on the internet who are breaking coffee machines, but there is a sense that, like, from a nonpartisan dimension, people are becoming less and less tolerant of sexual assault. And
I mean, Louis C.K. I'm sorry, like, I've enjoyed his material a lot, actually. The man's career is over.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
The man's career is over because he was a creep.
And that self-aggrandizing apology did not help either.
That wasn't an apology.
Yeah. Ooh, man.
No, I read the edit where it was where they edited it to actually be an apology, and I read the strike-through, and what he wrote was not an apology.
And just if you're keeping track, Crystal Castles is ruined. Brand New is ruined. No, I won't go through the list. It's sad. But we're about out of time. But just kind of putting a fine point on that. It's gonna. I really think this is gonna bite Schuette in the butt later.
Oh,
and I don't think he has any idea how much it's going to. I don't think I have any idea how much it's going to, because this ball is going to keep rolling, and
whoever happens
set this stuff.
Whoever happens to be the Democrat gubernatorial candidate, congratulations. Here's your ace.
Here's your ace. Yep.
Here's your ace, man. Like, all you have
to woman. Don't forget about Gretchen.
I say man colloquially because I say man a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
But this is your ace card. It's just all you have to say is Bill Schuette doesn't care if you get sexually assaulted.
Nope. Does not.
That's all you got to say. Congratulations.
All right. Well, I think we'll leave it for there today. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. This has been the Hoodrat Strategist radio program, only on 89.1 WIDR Kalamazoo. If you want to hear this show again, or want to, maybe you missed some of it, we upload these shows to YouTube. That's the Hoodrat Strategist radio program on YouTube. Thank y'all for tuning in. We're every Wednesday from 5 to 7. And keep fighting for that revolution solution.